Should I be selling right now?
I gotta get a bigger place.
What's my house worth? What do you think? What's my house really worth?
Do we need to renovate? That's pretty good. How do I buy a house?
What if I don't have time to see it in person?
What is going on with this housing market?
Don't worry. I can take the guesswork out of it.
All right, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Happy March.
How are you doing? Happy March.
Can
exactly.
you believe it's March?
So much going on. Can you believe Easter is right around the corner?
Yeah, it's in March, people.
It's in March,
Totally.
people.
If it wasn't for
Easter's
my
coming up.
daughter-in-law, like, thinking ahead of things, saying, Mom,
Crazy.
what are we doing? I'm like, let me look.
St. Patrick's Day is coming up. My goodness, there's so many things coming up. Even in our calendar of events that you're going to see later on. A lot of stuff coming up. This is a very important show. You could be anywhere this evening, but thank you for joining us, Rob and Maria McArtor with Let's Talk Real Estate Live. And we're so excited to have you on board with us this evening.
We are.
Again, it's a very important program. We have Candace Burke-Parrott in the house. So important that she's here. So thankful that she's here to talk about this most important topic that we've been advertising for several weeks now. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the calendar of events coming up. The latest housing market stats are coming up as well. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more just as soon as we get back. Hi, we're back. Thank you again for joining with us. If you don't know us and you know it's the first time coming here, this is Robert and Maria McArtor with Maryland Homes team of Remax Components. We're so excited that you're joining with us this evening. And if you're following us, you're doing it right now on social media. Right now, you're watching us on Facebook. We're streaming live to Facebook. We have an Instagram account. Make sure you like us and follow us there. Also, our LinkedIn. We're streaming live to LinkedIn. Welcome to all of our LinkedIn guests. We appreciate it. We have a TikTok account as well. So if you want to see Maria and I dancing around, just go to our TikTok account where there are probably one or maybe two dancing videos.
He makes me do.
Exactly. It's kind of crazy. And also we have we're streaming live to also to YouTube. So welcome to all of our YouTube people. We appreciate it. Those, and make sure that you do subscribe to that channel. That really does help us grow the channel, and we certainly do appreciate that as well.
Always.
So a couple things I wanted to share, before we get started here, and that is we do have, I am the guest auctioneer, by the way, this coming Friday, March 14th from 7 to 11 p.m. If you don't have your tickets for this
Friday.
Next Friday, not this coming Friday, but next Friday. And I always like to promote them. They do an excellent job in our community. Extreme Family Outreach.
Yes.
They have Rewrite a Child's Story, though Ohana means family. That's the theme of the event. They have a great band, great food, and great celebration.
And a great band.
And I said, the classics.
Sorry, I
the
missed
classics
that
are fantastic. But
They
so we
really
always
are.
have a great time. If you want to get tickets to this event, there's a lot of corporate sponsorships as well. If you want to have an entire table, you can. But go ahead and give them a call or visit the website at extremefamilyoutreach.org, and they will be able to help you with those tickets there. And also something else that I'm a part of this year, especially taking a deep responsibility in the back end of a Monty Golf tournament. You'll be seeing my face when it comes to registration time on the golf day. But we have the Amani Golf Tournament 2025 is going to be in Bully Rock this year. Bully Rock, June 9th.
Wow.
So make sure if you want to sign up and support this very important organization. They do wonderful work in Africa, in Kenya, Nairobi, building wells, solar-powered wells for fresh, clean waters for sustainability. They do a fantastic job there. I've been there. My daughter's actually been there several times.
She just returned.
And she just returned. She just returned last week from Kenya for a medical group that went there. So they're doing a great job there. If you want to learn more about Amani and what they do, please feel free to go to amanigolf.com and or .org rather, and you can follow through the prompts if you want to give support, if you want to sign up your team. Please go ahead and do so at the Amani website. So, Maria,
Yes,
you had a couple things you wanted to share.
I did. So
Yeah.
locally, to all the moms and nannies and friends and family, Annie's Playground is closed currently, and this is the Harford County Department of Recs statement. It is closed until further notice. And it says during an inspection today, like 6 hours ago. Well, what time is it now? Yeah, that would be right. They discovered several safety issues with cracks in some of the structures at Annie's Playground, and as a result, they closed it down until further notice. So we all know that those things probably are not easy fixes. So
Mhm.
they're going to probably need to take care of that, and so it's closed for now. I mean, I'm sure you probably could go take a walk and do all the fun things because we like to walk around there. We've actually had family pictures in the woods there somewheres.
Correct.
But anyway, so that is one thing. And secondly, a little more, all over Maryland. But did anybody hear about Ocean City having sharks? Someone was taking pictures 2 days ago. There
Mm.
was a sighting of 3 sharks.
I saw the photos online. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
going to stay in Bethany, just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
We stream live, so that means you can engage with us. If you'd like to leave a comment below any format that you're watching us on now, any social media, you can comment, and we'll be able to see that live here. And if you have a question or a comment for our guest or for Maria and I, please feel free to do that, and I can put you on the show here, and we'll try our best to answer that for you. So we really do appreciate your engagement. Give us a thumbs up if you like the program during the program. We really appreciate that as well, as we can see your reaction. So we kind of wanted to dive right into our interview. This is a very important, a lot of times we have a lot of fun here. Of course we do. We bring on a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, and we really do let our hair down and have a lot of fun here. But when I got wind of seeing this organization online, I thought to myself, I've got to have them on our show. And I really do appreciate that, the information that they were sharing with the community. And today we're going to be talking about something very important, and that is child sex trafficking. It is real, folks. It's not something that is happening in a third world country that we just simply read about and see on the news. It's right in our back door, much more than I actually realized. So I wanted to bring in someone who is, she has all of the knowledge in this area, and I'd like her to discuss that with us. Give a round of applause and a welcome to Candace Burke-Parrott. Candace, she's the Chief Engagement Officer with Araminta USA, araminta.org, usa.org. If you want more information, you can certainly visit them there. But Candace, go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Oh, good evening. Thank you so much for having me on the show. As you said, this is really an important message. Again, my name is Candace Burke-Parrott. I am the Chief Engagement and Partnership Officer with Araminta, and glad to be here.
Excellent.
And we're glad you're here with us as well.
Yeah, we're glad as well. So, Araminta, where did that name come from? I have to ask that.
So it's a lot more aligned than people can imagine. Araminta is actually the real name of Harriet Tubman. So when we talk about old day slavery and modern day slavery and a lot of the similarities, you see why they chose that name. So that's actually her real name, Araminta Bell.
I love that.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard that.
I love that.
Yes.
Well, just a little hint. I heard about it just a short time ago, but I wanted Candace
And I'm a
to
teacher.
share it
I've
with
never
us.
ever heard that.
I think that's wonderful,
former
lovely,
teacher.
and of course, look at the lantern above the eye. That
Yes.
was just a wonderful touch there. So,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
this is an important subject that a lot of people, many people want to turn their blind eye to. I'll be honest with you. They don't really think about this on a daily basis, nor do I think you should. But I think there's a lot of safeguards and things that people should be able to put in place for their children. So, Candace, give us a rundown of how you're a part of this organization. What's the heartbeat? Like, what brought you into this organization, and what you would like to share with us?
Sure. I started as a board member with them. I've been a consultant for many, many years, and I'm also a Maryland licensed realtor. So when I tell you this affects everybody and anybody, it really does. So I believe, that this is a mission that I've sort of been working with for many, many years, probably over 20 years. And I also do coaching and do one-on-one with the survivors. So it really is important to get the message out there. For me, we talk about the restoration and the education. I heard Maria say she's a former teacher. So we're in the middle schools and the high schools. And when people say to me, do you think they're too young? Absolutely not. When we start talking shortly about the ages of some of these children, I say, who do you want to get them, us or the trafficker, right? So when we're talking to, I go in and I speak with the Board of Education and the educators and the kids, and I train the security resource officers across Maryland. I speak to realtors. If you show me a career, I'm going to show you how trafficking affects it. And when I tell you it touches everybody, it touches everybody. Absolutely.
Candace,
I believe you totally.
For those of us that don't know, what is human trafficking? We're thinking that it's adults, maybe kidnapping other adults and then maybe using them for work or
kids.
something of
it's
that
funny
nature.
that you think adults. I think children.
Yeah, so just if you could define that for those that are watching us for the first
Sure,
time.
sure.
Yeah.
So simply put, human trafficking is the buying and selling of people. So, we focus a lot on the children. It is both adults and children and young adults. But with the children, we're seeing such an uptick in the familial trafficking. And you say, okay, what's familial trafficking? That's where they're trafficked by a family member. So we have the traditional trafficking where there's a trafficker, a non-trafficker, which affects a lot of the, the homeless and the runaways. We have the familial trafficker, gang controlled. So when I tell you that it's a $150 billion industry, then it resonates with you why it's such a high industry. So when I usually ask people, what does human trafficking mean to you? Exactly what you said, Robert. It's kidnapping. Absolutely not. We hear all the time that it's that white van snatching our kids. Absolutely not. The way that they get to our kids, all I say is it's a kidnapping of the mind. And so you think about the most vulnerable kids that we have. The traffickers are getting them because of their vulnerabilities. What I can tell you is it is not them snatching our kids off the streets. Are there certain situations where missing kids are brought into trafficking? Absolutely. I don't take away from that. But when we've got our kids in school, and as I say, you're skipping school, you're playing truancy, you're hanging out, you're meeting those older males and females, that's how it begins. And so it's not traditional. And to Maria's point, it's in your backyard. And so if you want to think it's somebody else's child, think that. But what I can tell you is it isn't. It's anybody and everybody.
And I don't want to necessarily bring light to this, although I don't mind bringing light to this. Like the Jeffrey Epstein, I think my kids, one summer, they wanted to watch the movie and I didn't even know what it was about. And I was like so sad after that, but then also happy that they chose to speak up. But
Yes.
exactly what you said. They preyed on an adult. He preyed on an adult who was insecure. Like, here's a great job, and everyone wants to be part of something. They want to be valued. They want to be loved. And I feel like being a former teacher, I saw so much of that lacking, even in a wealthy neighborhood.
Yeah.
I opened a very, very good school in a great neighborhood where probably the income level is above average. And there were kids there where their parents partied all weekend and they took care of their siblings at like third grade level. And they're watching their 1-year-old and 2-year-old siblings. So, but in reference to adults, I can see that they know how to prey on the weak, those that might be
Yes.
lonely. And people just, like I said, I think they want to be included in something and then they don't realize what they've gotten themselves into until probably too late.
And it's interesting that you say Epstein because exactly what I say to people. A lot of people would like to think traditionally as the traffickers being male and the victim survivors being female. It's absolutely not true. When we think about the traffickers, the buyers, and the victims, they look like us. They look like us. So they're everyday people. They are both female and male. We have male and female buyers, male and female traffickers, male and female survivors, right? And so when you talk about a Jeffrey Epstein, one of the things we talk about is a bottom girl. And the bottom girl is really the top girl because she's the one that runs everything for the trafficker, steps in that line, keeps them in order, takes our kids where they need to be, gives them their quota, collects that money and keeps him in line. When you think about Jeffrey Epstein, what you don't think about is Maxwell being his bottom girl, right? So whether it's high end, rich, wealthy, poverty, it's across the board. And it does happen in high neighborhoods. For instance, domestic servitude is a form of slavery, right? We talk about labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking, and we're focusing on sex trafficking, but people don't realize that with the sex trafficking, even though, you know, there's the labor trafficking going on, you don't think about those people that are knocking on your door and asking you if they can cut down your trees and they've got kids with them that are school age kids that should be in school. Sometimes you don't connect the dots. And so when we
Right,
talk about the
right.
sex trafficking and the kids are lured in, by the time they're lured in, because of that vulnerability and because of that low self-esteem, again, this is how they get them. Again, we can talk about some of the online apps and how they're getting to our kids, but it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
So, Candace, I don't know if you have the answers to this question, but in my mind, being a mom of 4 children and a nonna of 6 grandchildren, I don't understand how a family member could sell their kids out. And I've read the stories, like on Tim Tebow's information, the letters that girls have written of their parents giving them away to people. And I just, the mindset, I
Mhm.
don't understand. Like, how do we prevent that if there is even a possibility to do that? I'm just like, at night, I will lose sleep over these kind of things. This is who I am. It bothers me so much. And when The Sound of Freedom came out,
Mhm.
my daughter is 21 and she has a really big group of friends. And I paid for all of them to go see the movie. I wanted them to see what they may not want to ever look at, but it
Mhm.
is reality.
Sure, sure. So to that point, yes, I have a lot to say on that. Tim Tebow was actually our guest speaker at our gala 2 years ago. He and his
Wow.
wife came and were our guest speakers, so very close to home for us. When we talk about the familial trafficking, it can be a parent, it can be a cousin, it can be an uncle, but one of the cases that we dealt with last year, June of last year, was a 14-year-old who was actually trafficked by her mother at the Horseshoe Casino. That's a locality, right? So when people can identify with that, you say, trafficking a 14-year-old, absolutely. But this 14-year-old, you could not tell her that what her mother was doing was wrong. She got scared because of an encounter with a buyer that scared her, and that's where she came to us for the help. It wasn't because of what her mother was doing. So where you cannot fathom what is going on with a 14-year-old, we have kids as young as 4 that are potentially the trafficking victim of a family member. So, unfortunately, sex sells. And do we have a long way to go with legislation and changing the laws and getting people involved? Yes. And that's why it's so important that we do things like this, because the more that we make the community aware, the more people want to get involved. You never think it can
Right,
happen to your children. And I can
right.
tell you, I do these presentations all day, every day. And what I can tell you is some of the people go away. 3 months later, they call me and they've found themselves in a situation. So familial trafficking is huge and it's real.
So that's so I see a couple of things that are really broken, and that is, first of all, I truly believe that hurt people. You know,
Yes.
broken people hurt people, and so we have that Molotov cocktail. We have that connection there, which is destructive. Okay, but as soon as you have that element, then you have this what you call as a buyer that comes into play. And so you paint the picture of what a potential buyer looks like, and how do they even connect to someone who is trafficking? Like, is this
Sure.
something like, do they know that there's certain spots in town that they go to, or is there, apps that they go to? Like you already mentioned one
Mm.
app, but is there multiple other apps they go to find this
There
information?
are Sure. And there are multiple apps, and I encourage people to go online and look those up, right? You can go on several, Polaris, you can go on, some of the other websites, and it will give you a list. And one thing that I say to the parents, when you go into your child's phone, you should always know who they are interacting with, right? So if I gave you the list, I have a list that I use of 15 apps, another one of 30 apps. Roblox, as I said, a lot of the small kids are on Roblox. There is one in there called hidden calculator. Now, if you're a parent, especially an educator, you're thinking that child is using that calculator because you've got the smartest child on the block. What the hidden calculator is actually a vault. So when these traffickers are encouraging our kids to take these risque pictures, they're showing them how to hide those in that hidden calculator app. But as a parent, you're not thinking that. You're thinking, oh, that's a calculator. No.
Mm.
And so that's why you have to familiarize yourself with the multiple apps. There are so many that when I put the thing up on the screen and people say, wow, my child uses that. That's why it's important to be aware of who your child is talking to, what apps they're using, and familiarizing yourself with those. 100%.
Mm. That's really good because I feel like a lot of parents, and I know that when I was teaching, coming home really tired, Rob was running the real estate company on his own. We were tired, and like I feel like I could have missed something. You know what I mean? And I know that every parent or sibling or somebody, we just need to look out for each other. Like, and you have to be intentional. I feel like with COVID, the kids have become inclusive, to themselves, and I think we need to just check on those kind of things. You know,
I think
we
as parents too, we have the ability to go into our phones, especially if we control the accounts, and actually request a permission from our children to be able to download apps. So if they want
Yes.
to download the latest and greatest game or something like that, we should be able to. We should have the ability, and we do have the ability to monitor that and allow them, give them a permission to download particular apps. But I
Hmm.
also want to make sure that parents are aware that about all of these apps that you're talking
right
about,
that
like something
we
as
would
simple
say
as a
sure, no
calendar.
problem,
If my
right?
child came to me and said, "Hey, my someone at school told me I need to download," and it could have been a friend, I would need to download a calculator app, I would probably just say, "Oh, it's a calculator, it's a science calculator, whatever," and I would just absolutely allow them to download that. And
Exactly.
I think it's a uncomfortable, and I'm just speaking from the heart here. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have with your child about not sharing too much information about themselves to other people, like giving a
Yeah.
stranger your address and your name, and send photographs of yourself, even if they're not risque photographs, even just sending photographs or putting them in this vault that you're talking about. We as parents have to be equipped, we have to be educated. And I think that's one of the great things that I loved about when I inquired about your organization, is that you are educating almost on a daily basis other parents and the
Yes.
community with what's the signs they need to look out for. And I think it's just important as parents that we need to educate our
Yes.
children, and even educate ourselves that this is a reality. I know you gave us one example that was in the Horseshoe Casino. Is there other examples that are in our back door right here locally?
So when you just mentioned about the photographs, right? One of the things I have in one of my presentations is that we had a father that called, and an adult approached his child and offered her $500 for a picture of her feet to go on OnlyFans. Well, this is a very common thing of how they get into to the teenagers. So when you think about $500 to the average 15, 16-year-old, that's a lot of money. So when he called, he wanted to know, was that illegal? And, was that a crime? So I
Mm.
ask average people, do you think that's a crime? It isn't. It absolutely isn't. But what I say to the kids, what's next? And it kind of ties into what you just said, Robert, right? So taking a picture of your feet may not be a crime, but what's going to be next? Then it's go a little bit further up and let's do some semi-nude. And what I tell the kids is when we start talking about sextortion, which is a whole nother show we can do, but this is how they're exploiting our kids. So we're getting a lot of suicidal kids where they've been trapped into this. They've taken that risque picture, and then before you know it, they're being blackmailed or threatened. And that's what sextortion is, through that online enticement. And now the kids are suicidal because they're threatening to put nude or semi-nude pictures out there. So that's another issue that we have to deal with. But when we talk about cases, I mean, we have so many that are happening in the backyard. What I encourage people to do is when you have time, go online, put your zip code in where you go to church, where you work, where you go to school, and put in human trafficking with that zip code. I think you will be unpleasantly surprised at just how it really does affect you and what's going on in your true backyard. And so I think that with that, it really hits home for you, wherever you live. And there is not a county in Maryland that does not have trafficking in their backyard. Not one.
I totally believe you. So, Candace, do they go to your website to find the most common apps that are not truly good, and that parents should be careful of?
So we don't have that on the website, but what I can tell you is that if they just Google apps regarding, online enticement or apps
Okay.
regarding human trafficking, they will come up there. They will pop up everywhere. And then you can see, like I said, FBI, Polaris, the NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they they have a wealth of education on what is and what isn't. So,
And
it's
why are
out
they
there.
not shutting those
Yeah.
down? Why are they even legal? Why aren't there blocks on the computers
Yes.
naturally when you buy one for that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
there's nothing good that comes out of it. Nothing.
Yeah.
I-
Maria, there was a huge website several years ago. So I'm part of the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm their public awareness co-chair. And so that's really important because that's made up of FBI, Homeland Security, non-government officers, and nonprofits, right? So when we find a case, sometimes they reach out to me or I reach out to them, and that collaboration is key. But there was a website called Backpage that was up for many years. You could go on there and see a semi-nude or a nude 12-year-old. And so to your point, why are they not shutting these down? It took the feds to shut it down. Now, some people said, it wasn't a great thing because now they couldn't go and find those survivors or the victims. But, the lesser of two evils, it took a group of U.S. Attorney's Office, State's Attorney's
Mm,
Offices, the FBI, Homeland Security to shut that down. But again, to your point, why is it such a fight to get these things shut down when they're
yes.
coming after our kids? Back
Well,
to
it's money.
Robert's point about the bias, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still taken back by the whole. I think we just need to be aware as parents as well that there is even kids. I don't suspect too many kids are watching our program, but parents, please have this conversation with your kids. And that is there seems to be a grooming process. There
Yes.
seems to be a process that slowly, so this isn't maybe like again, the white van's not pulling in front of your house and snatching the kids, even though that does happen. But
Mm.
more times than many, you are having that relationship starting to build. They want to build that relationship by, hey, I'm going to give you some money. Just send me a picture of your feet or something like that.
Mhm.
Or,
Mhm.
do you need clothes or something? Maybe I can help supply this for you. It's that grooming process that's disturbing to me that I think that
Yes.
our kids absolutely need to be aware of and have that open communication with us as a parent. I think it's just super important. And as well as parents, and I'll just share this as well, that if we're allowing our kids to have Twitter, having social media such as Facebook and Instagram and things like that, we need to be careful or share with our kids to be careful with the ones that they friend request or that they accept friend requests from,
Mm,
especially if it's someone that they don't know. Because if it's
Yes.
someone they don't know, everyone's all you hear about on social media is followers. Well, I need
Yeah.
as many followers as possible. So they're going to get click, 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 accept as many followers as possible, but they don't realize they're really setting themselves up for disaster.
And that's a great point because there actually is a process, right? There's a three-step process. It's the recruiting, the grooming, and the turning out, as we say. With that recruiting, it can look like anything. Those traffickers can work, especially on our kids, for 3 to 6 months. And so it's not where, they meet them this week, they're paying for them to get their hair done, they're paying for them to get their nails done, and then they're in next week. Absolutely not. That recruiting is a very calculated process. So it can be a bunch of kids hanging out, at the kids' cool house where they all go hang out. They've got their older friend. They don't even realize that they're in a trafficking ring. And then before you know it, they're taking those risque pictures and that's what they're holding over them. Or it could be that one-on-one where they're, hi, how old are you? And who are you? And, they're doing the chat rooms. And then before they know it, they've got them engaged in. After the recruiting is the grooming, and that's where they're preparing them. So it's, I'm going to buy you that $1,400 phone. One of the things I say with the males, when they're going after the males, and the males always think, they can't touch them, that's absolutely not true. With the males, they're going after them with their shoes, with recording studio time. Let me be the one that takes you to the next level of your music. That whole grooming is ridiculous. And then the turning out comes after they've invested thousands of dollars. But what I say to the kids is, for every penny they've spent on you, you're going to make that back in the first night that they turn you out. So remember, recruiting, the grooming, and then the turning out. And that's really how it comes to the notion of actual trafficking.
So turning out, is it, if you could explain that for a second, because I've got everything else, but the turning out, at what point do they actually take that child from a home and utilize them in their trafficking? Is that a reality, I guess?
So what if I tell you, Robert, they don't take that child from that home? That child goes to school every day. That child appears normal. And then that child, while they're waiting for mom to come home at 5, 6 o'clock at night, they're actually being trafficked between 3 and 5. They go home to normalcy, right? I had a 16-year-old that I worked with. I got that connect through the FBI. And the mother was beside herself because she was a 2-parent family, great income, middle-class family. Her 16-year-old had been trafficked for 2 years and hadn't told anybody. And the mother was like, how did I miss the signs? And so I really want people to train their mind to understand it isn't what people think it is. And you're very in tune with what people think. They take them from the house. No, they're showing up every day. That's their normalcy. So when I'm talking to the teachers and I say, when that child comes into school the next day and falls asleep on the computer, you think they've been on social media all night or they've been hanging out with their friends. You don't put 2 and 2 together that they could have been on the track all night, as we say, right? That they've been in the life all night. You don't put that together. And so I say there's 3 main things why these kids come back to school. If they've been trafficked all weekend, they're tired, they didn't meet their expectations of the profit. Now they don't, their food gets withheld, their necessities get withheld. They come to school for either the normalcy, so nobody misses them, right? They're in school. The other thing is they may not have had a meal. They may have withheld the food from them. So they're coming to school to get fed. But the number 3 is the main thing. What's in schools?
Food.
Other kids.
Oh, other kids, friends.
Other kids. So when they're recruiting, right, and they have a quota to meet, they're going right into the school to get these other kids on board. Because when I say $150 billion industry, you have to remember, the more kids, the more income. So they don't care if they spend $5,000 on a 3 to 6 month period, because they're going to, like I say, turn them out. And that's when they're putting them out, they're servicing. It can be as simple as, you think you're my boyfriend. You've got a 25-year-old female who's believing a vulnerable 16-year-old, making them believe that she cares enough about you that that's who she's connected to. At the point that she is now saying, I can't afford to keep us like this. I've been paying all your bills. I need you to do a sexual favor with a friend of mine. That's as simple as the simplest for turning out. That young man says, what? I can't do that. That young female says, I thought, we were connected. Absolutely not. Like I tell parents, if your 15-year-old daughter is dating a 24-year-old, really? Why? Let's be serious about what does a 24-year-old want with a 15-year-old?
Correct.
And so those are some of the red flags that we talk about. When you ask about the buyers, how they're reaching them, it can be as simple as them circling the school bus stops. It used to be the malls, but as they're gradually shutting the malls down, that I'm glad to see, then a lot of it is online. Maria, you mentioned the pandemic. Well, during the pandemic, the numbers went up to 97%. And what I tell people is, where were you during the pandemic? On your phone, on your computer, online. That's where the kids were. So when I tell you the traffickers increased, it almost doubled their numbers. So when they're talking about the buyers don't look like people think they do. Buyers are people that are in high-end positions. They can be politicians. You mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, right? He sets those buyers up. They had a whole island of buyers. They came in, got what they wanted. So when you talk about buyers, don't sleep on whether they're the coaches, your school bus drivers. We had a case in Montgomery County a few years ago where the trafficker was testing out the merchandise. The girl got scared and called for assistance. When they arrested those 2 traffickers, that particular trafficker was a Prince George's County school bus driver. So when we talk about traffickers and buyers, They're everyday people. I cannot stress that enough.
I
I
think
think
that was a rude awakening. Sorry, hon. A rude awakening for me that sadly the United States has the biggest dollar buyers of these children. And there's a stat, and you probably already know that stat. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes,
which is sickening to me.
yes,
But then, like you said, um, the politicians in them, when you were saying how hard it was to get that website taken down, you had to go
yes,
through all those steps. I believe that that's linked to blackmail, that some of those people higher up probably have somebody holding something over them. And it took a little while longer to get that done. And
yes.
you know
So
what? I just wish that, and I guess I'm going to have to change how I pray now, that, that these people are convicted in their hearts. Let it go. You know what? If you made that mistake, who cares? Don't make another child pay for it. Just be honest and let it go. But it's
yeah.
such an addiction too, I believe, for these buyers. It's an addiction
it is. Yeah.
that captures them. And
Yes.
I mean, like anything else, but nobody wants to talk about sexual addiction. They'll talk about smoking and they'll talk about drinking, but no one wants to talk about sexual
Yes.
addiction. And it's
Yes.
a very real thing.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. I think what
You
hurts.
brought up
Oh,
Jeffrey
go ahead.
Epstein, and for instance, when he mysteriously committed suicide in jail, the day that all the cameras were off, really. So that speaks to what you're talking about, Maria, correct? That if they can buy off certain people, can you imagine if he would have exposed his buyers? A lot of heads would have rolled. And I dare to say some of those are probably politicians and people in power and judges and law enforcement. And, we've got some great law enforcement people that are taking this down and combating it. But they also recognize that there are people in high places that they have the money and the means to shut it down. That's it.
Um,
I think what hurts my heart the most, honestly, is that because I work with a lot of children, and thankfully to organizations like Extreme Family Outreach, that I work with a lot of different organizations that serve the underserved communities, and I see these children firsthand. I work with these children. I'm able to have an opportunity to do that, and it just hurts my heart because I know their intentions. I know they're pure. They're wonderful. They want to survive. They want to have what they see on TV. And some of these kids obviously they're struggling with either food, or they're struggling with the parents fighting over finances, things of that nature. So I can see them being the most susceptible to this type
vulnerable,
of very vulnerable
vulnerable.
to this. And that's why this is such a difficult subject, but it's such a necessary subject for us to be able to bring even onto our show, so we can spread the word. And so I'm just so grateful for that. But I wanted to share that because if you have any insight in that area, as far as do you see this happening more so in underserved communities, or do you see it just spread out? It doesn't matter what community you're in.
So, and that's a really great point, and thank you for saying that. So when we're talking about the vulnerable kids, right? You take that the brain is not fully developed until they're 25. So what I say to the teenagers, don't beat yourself up about that. You are exactly where you're supposed to be as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. And so while their brain is still developing, the trafficker is preying on that. And so when they get that good feeling, like, oh, you want me to buy you that North Face jacket? You want me to pay for your hair? You want me to buy you those shoes that are $600? They're loving that. And so they're absorbing, they're like sponges. And so they're loving that. But one population I want to talk about that comes to mind when you say that, Robert, is the foster kids and the kids that are in the system. When you've got a child that is bounced from foster home to foster home, they have their belongings in a black trash bag. How much do you think persuasion it takes from a trafficker to convince them that nobody cares about them, even if they do? So, what they're going to say is, nobody cares about you. That's why they bounce you from house to house. I'm going to do more for you than that foster parent or DHS does for you. Come and let me help you. Not knowing what they're walking into. But when they're buying into these kids and these kids are buying into them, you can't convince these kids that I've got my clothes sitting here in a black plastic bag, that they care about you more than I do. And the vulnerabilities are real. They prey on that low self esteem. And so yes, there are some underserved areas, and the foster care system is one. But I also talk about the runaways. What I always say is, I don't tell the kids not to run away from home because I don't know what they're running from. What I will tell them is to make sure they've got a safe space and they know who they're running to. Because again, in Maryland, if you run 3 times, you're considered a chronic runaway. You better hope that you've got parents and guardians that care enough to look for you on the 4th event like they did on the 1st time. And if they don't, and that trafficker happens to be there on that 4th time, guess who's getting them?
That's amazing. So I just wanted to share real quick. Some people know my story. Many people don't. And that is, I was a teenage runaway. When I came to Baltimore, I came to Baltimore in a taxi cab, and I was dropped off at a hotel on Route 40. And that's where I lived in a hotel room for quite a while until I was rescued from there. So, I wanted to make sure people know that there's hope, that if they do decide, even if I'm speaking to someone who's considering running away, there is a hotline out there for runaways. It's 1-800-RUNAWAY. Just simply remember that 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you suspect or you find that someone has done that, I think it's very important that they get the help that they need, that someone circumvents and finds them immediately, because it is a pretty ugly world, a lot uglier than it was in 1987 when I ran away.
But honey,
So Robert, you bring about a great point, right? 1987, it was entirely different. What I tell people is trafficking was happening back then. It just wasn't called trafficking. So when you think about how you were in that hotel, I didn't know that about you, so I just learned that about you. But look how easy that would have been for you to be a trafficking victim. And so when kids don't have the means for a hotel and they have run and they finish up on Route 40, but they're not in a hotel. But then along comes that person that says, you want me to pay for you to stay in a hotel? I've got you for a couple of nights. Come on. There's no strings attached. Come on. So one thing that I tell you, in 2012, up until 2012, trafficking was not considered trafficking. It was it was child prostitution. And so when those laws changed in 2012, that says there's no such thing as child prostitution for a child under the age of 18. So now, when they changed the laws in 2012, they made it a form of child abuse. Well, it should be a form of child abuse.
Yes.
But you imagine that up until then, those kids that were arrested were charged with trafficking or child prostitution. Insane. And so when you picture yourself in modern days now, right, as that runaway, you didn't have that money to stay in that hotel, but you're cold and you're hungry, and along comes that male or female, because remember I told you traffic is a male or female, and now they're saying, Robert, you're cold, you're hungry, I can buy you a meal. So what do we define human trafficking as besides the buying and selling of people? It is a commercial sex act once anything of value is exchanged for a sex act. We say that again. Anything of value. So, Robert, if you'd have been dumped out on Route 40 and you were cold, didn't have a coat, and Maria comes along and she's persuading you that she's going to take care of you and she's that motherly figure, and she offers you a coat, but then she asks you to perform a sex act, that's trafficking, because that commercial sex act has now occurred. The difference is, under the age of 18, we don't have to prove any controlling elements. Over the age of 18, we now have to provide proof of force, fraud, or coercion. Doesn't have to be all 3, but it has to be one of those for anybody over the age of 18. So it's as simple as that. Robert's cold. He's dumped out on Route 40. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't have the money for the hotel. Maria comes along. Let me pay for 5 nights in the hotel. The next thing you know, you've got people coming through, and that's the turning out that Robert has to service, because now Robert has got used to that hot shower and that towel and his bed being made, right? So we don't put it in that frame of mind, but when you put it like that, that's exactly a prime example of how in today's world you could have easily have been a trafficking victim.
Because they're part of like a larger organization, I guess, and they're bringing in other people, which is which I can understand now. I didn't really realize that before. We're so used to seeing, when we see, the first time I ever thought about this was with the movie Taken. If you remember Liam Neeson in that movie, taken, that was a pretty big shocker to me. And again, we're of the mindset of, oh, well, that happens overseas. That
Mm-hmm.
happens. That wasn't in Los Angeles. That wasn't in
Yeah.
New York or Baltimore. That was in some foreign country, Paris or wherever. So it made Ukraine. So it makes for an interesting movie.
Yeah.
But
And
to hear that this is happening in Montgomery County and at the Horseshoe Casino,
mhm.
at
Baltimore.
in underserved communities and things of that nature, it's pretty shocking. So I just want to share this as well, and that if you know of anyone, whether it's a friend or a coworker or even someone that's one of your childhood friends that are in school, that you think that is being trafficked or the risk of being trafficked, there is a national human trafficking hotline. And I just
Mhm.
wanted to share that number, and that's going to be in the description below after our show. It's 888-3737-888. So I'm going to have that number down there below. And of course, Candace, after the show, if there's any other resources that you think I should provide, I'll absolutely put that in the description below our program. So it's out there for everyone to be able to see that. So
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, honey, because
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. How old were you when you were away?
I was 17. So I
Okay, so
just turned 17.
You just turned 17,
I
so
was-
you were
and it-
still under 18.
And it's interesting, Candace, because I remember being in the hotel room and I would just literally cry every day. I would just cry. I'd walk the streets, try and find food. I was hungry. It was a mess. And even the manager, I think, didn't even charge me for a long time because he knew I just didn't have any money for it. But it's interesting that you mentioned this about the people that are trying to groom you, because at least 2-3 times a night, I would have a knock at my door because everyone knew that I was there. And I would say, and I would always hear through the door, "Hey, honey, you need anything?" And I would just like stay quiet because I was really scared. Wasn't
Yeah.
a man, I wasn't a kid of the streets, you know what I mean? But I never responded to them. But it's interesting though,
Thank
because as I would
God.
leave that room during the day and walk up and down 40 and things of that nature, they knew that there was this kid staying in that room. And
Yeah.
it's just by the grace of God that I was absolutely,
Yes.
covered
Protected.
in protection. There's no
Yeah.
question about it, But I think just as you said back then, you just didn't hear about that. You
No.
just didn't. Like we
Even
never
10
talked
years
about that
ago,
in school.
5 years ago.
We
was
didn't have
just-
cell phones. We didn't have cell phones in school where we had apps and things like that. So we didn't have that connection. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Today, you have that connection. You could be in the deep woods of Iowa and have that connection with someone else.
Sure. And I remember I gave a presentation probably about 10 years ago in Oxon Hill at a church, and I was talking about familial trafficking. And afterwards, I always stay around, obviously, to answer questions. And there was one lady who was hanging back. And when she came up to me, she made sure everybody was out of the way. And she said, "Thank you so much." And she was in tears. And she said, "I am 58 years old. And it wasn't until I heard you speak tonight that I realized what happened to me at the age of 16. And what she said was her mother made her sleep with the landlord on the first of every month. And she thought that she was a child prostitute. And when I came out and said there's no such thing as child prostitution, she said it really hit home for her. So clearly we got her the services she needed. But you imagine, and I wasn't with Araminta at that time, but you imagine 58 years old and you have that aha moment that, wow, all this shame and blame I've put on myself, and I was a victim of child sex trafficking. It just wasn't called that back then.
Mm-hmm.
True. And Rob, I think about the runaways. There's 2 runaways. You ran away because you were being abused at home.
Yes.
I mean, in many ways. So if they take you back, then you're just going back to a home where there's more abuse. But then there's some people who are just running away, I guess, just because they want to be a part of that lifestyle. I don't know, but and in reference to what you were saying, I was a special educator, and I had a little boy in 3rd grade, and I still remember to this day, he would come in every Monday so tired. And I mean, this is elementary school. And they would give him a hard time. And I'm like, just give him a break. You don't know what's going on at home. And I bought him, he was so hungry at breakfast. I bought him an extra breakfast because he was so hungry. And I got reprimanded for that. because
Mhm.
they were only allowed one breakfast. And I'm like, fire me, because he's hungry and something is going on at home,
Mhm.
because I had a dual background of psychology. Doesn't make me like smarter than anybody else, but being a mom, something's wrong. They don't just come in and sleep like that and are starving every single Monday, you know.
Mm.
I
Do we
love teachers like you. I absolutely,
Mhm.
because you pay attention. So let's talk about when the teachers like you bring it to the attention of the administrators and you're shut
Yes.
down, right? Like you just
Mm.
said, you were reprimanded. So that infuriates me because some of the schools will say, oh, we can't allow that in our school. We can't talk about this in our school. It doesn't happen in our school.
Yep.
Yeah, I guarantee it's happening in your school.
Absolutely.
And so when you've got those teachers that are amazing and they're like, Candace, I know something is not right. I feel it. I know it. I've told my administrators they're not doing anything about it. I'm that one that will come up there and say, guys, you need us to come in and do a presentation. Now, I will tell you there are several middle schools and high schools that allow me to get in there, and I rotate 7 whole periods of educating the kids, right? And if the kids don't want to listen, what I do tell them is, what about your siblings? So I get to them through that sometimes, because what I was going to say about the 16-year-old who was trafficked for 2 years, she never told her parents what was going on. But when the trafficker wanted her to recruit her 12-year-old sister, oh no, she wasn't having that.
Good
She
for
was like, oh
her.
no. And that's when she told somebody. And the mother was blown away. But that daughter sucked that up for 2 years. And then she said, I'm not putting my sister through this. So
Good
with the
for her.
schools, we've got to do a much better job in being realistic. So what if it happens in your school? Do you want to be the
Exactly.
school that's known for the child that didn't quite make it? Or do you want to be known
Exactly.
for the school that did something about it?
It's a
And so
tough
we have
subject.
such a
Yeah.
long way to go, but it's the
But
truth.
I don't
Yep.
see. I mean, I quit. I left in the middle of the year, broke my contract, um, just because more things like that were happening, and I struggled for a full year because I didn't want to leave them. Who's going to protect them? Who's going to look out for them? But then, if they don't make the changes, I can't make the changes. I mean, I would have taken them all home if I could have. Honest to God, Rob knows. Like I would come home crying,
Guilty.
um, and
Mhm.
but they're not welcoming to that. Like, I mean, thank God you're in some schools. Board of Education, I'm at the meetings. I'm fighting for the kids. I
Mhm.
mean, and so are a circle of friends of mine that are wonderful, but not everyone wants to be there. Nobody wants to speak up, but they're not welcoming to people like you who educate them. We talk education here. This is an important education that they need to hear. And I mean, I'm sure you have doors closed to you from the schools that they're not saying, sure, come in, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and I don't give up easily. What I will tell you is for the few schools that I've been working with for 5 or 6 years now, it's word of mouth. So somebody tells somebody and they're like, Candace, can you come in? And I never turn down a presentation just like tonight, right? Because the more we reach, the more we teach, right? And so for me, if one school calls me and says, well, we're kind of thinking about it maybe, and I said, well, let me come in and just touch a little bit and show. By the time they've listened to 10 minutes of what's going on, they're the teachers that are the ones that fight for it. But I also try to get in through the PTAs, because when you've got those parents that are fighting for their children,
Yes.
they're going
Yes.
to be the ones that go to the principal and say, what do we need to do? How do we get her in here? Why aren't you guys allowing it? So there are other
Right.
means that we use to get in, but I don't give up easily
In
at
my
all.
book,
I love that.
you're a blue ribbon school if you bring in an organization like Araminta,
Yes.
and you bring in Candace to speak to your school. That's a blue ribbon school, in my opinion. I think and I don't want to assume this, but I believe that there's probably some schools that want to avoid this kind of not confrontation, but information and education in their school, because they feel like it may bring a stain onto their
Mhm.
blue ribbon status or
Exactly.
something like that, because it's just so competitive out there. But
It's
I
pride.
yeah,
It's pride. That's all it is.
it's
And I look through
pride.
a
Yep.
different lens also because, again, I've been in this for many years. My attitude is, and sometimes I say it, wow, do you think maybe there's some buyers in your school? Or wow, do you think there's some traffickers in your school? And you're horrified. But the reality is, why are you avoiding? And it is exactly what you said. You both said it. It's just like, we act like if we don't have it in the school, it doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
I'm saying maybe it's happening more than you know, because
Yeah.
when we look at the teachers, the coaches, the the bus drivers, the principals, again, Google. Somewhere, somehow, there is a principal that has either been a buyer or a trafficker. There is a coach, there is a bus driver. And so let's do the reality of, let's make sure it's not your school. You should be aspiring to be a blue ribbon school. Absolutely. And if you're not, then I'm concerned, because when I look through my lenses, why aren't you? You should want this to be in your school, to be able to say, not here, we don't allow it here. But it's not that easy. It really isn't. And we knock down those doors on purpose.
If this
Absolutely.
happens to a child, even one instance or even for a full year, let's say, that seems like forever for that child. That 1 year seems like forever. And let me just share something with you. It, for most people out there, it's a lifetime of counseling, of trying to deal with shame,
Healing.
dealing with hurt, trying to
Yeah.
receive healing over this kind of situation. And do we want our children to have to go through that the rest of their life, constantly be in a counselor's office or a therapist's office, receiving medication, even to deal with anxiety because of this in their lives? Or would we rather face it head on and
Yes.
provide them the education and the information they need and be a proactive parent? Not be the parent that's on the sideline, but be proactive in their lives and look and see what's on their phone and the people they're talking to, and the neighbors that they're going with, and the babysitters we're dropping them off to. We
Yes.
really need to be more proactive with this so we can really protect our children so they're not wounded right at leaving our house at 18,
Yes.
19 years of age to start their life. They're wounded right off the bat, and they have a
Yes.
lifelong of counseling to have to deal with. That 58-year-old or 54 or 55-year-old that you just spoke about, I
Mhm.
can almost promise you she has been dealing with this shame and this issue probably her entire life.
Yes.
I know she has.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And so when you have those, teachers that are willing to walk that mile with the kids, right? And they get shut down, it's very disheartening. And so, to your point, Robert, what is the blowback from that when these kids aren't believed or nobody's hearing them? So I had a law enforcement officer about 3 months ago who I was dealing with that had a 15-year-old, and we found out through therapy that she had been trafficked for 2 years. When I spoke to the law enforcement, her thing was, well, you should see this 15-year-old. What's your point? 15 years old, looking like what?
Oh,
She's
dear
older.
God.
Well, if you'd been trafficked for 2 years, you'd look older too. So again, I go down this whole thing of, are we victim blaming? And so my attitude was, let me reverse psychology. So what would you say that if that was your granddaughter? Would you feel the same way, that 15-year-old looks older, or would you offer the help that they need? So when I tell you, we could do a show every week on this and the different pockets of it. But it's insane. It is absolutely insane what we expect our kids to endure with an underdeveloped brain, where they are still struggling with the peer pressure. Some of them are suicidal. They're dealing with all this
Yeah.
as a teenager. I wouldn't want to be a teenager in today's world. I just
Me
wouldn't,
either.
because the pressure
Yeah.
that they deal with, and we
Yes.
didn't have social media and all of this,
Yeah.
it's insane. And then we pile it on top of that victim blaming. No, it's not okay. It's absolutely
Right.
not okay.
So, Candace, I follow Dr. Amen. He is a well-known brain specialist, and he said that the average development brain now is 29 because of technology. It has weakened our brain. And I'm like,
I believe
great, add 4 more years. These poor kids,
And I just
But I
turned
totally
29.
believe
My
him.
goodness, yeah.
I mean, he's
I was gonna say, you just turned 30. You're all right. You missed it.
I'm good. Yeah, I just missed it. That's right. Exactly. Let me ask you something, Candace. We're towards the end of our time with you, and I greatly appreciate you coming on board with
Yes,
us. It's
thank you
been
so
it's been
much.
a pure joy. The last remaining
joyful
words.
things,
If you
but-
have if you have a school administrator that's watching this, or you have a parent that's watching this, what is the best way for them to contact you and your organization to be able to schedule a time with you to either visit their classroom or to actually maybe find counseling, or to be able to alert that something's happening within their community? What's the best thing that they need to do for them?
Thank you. So let me say, first and foremost, again, especially with the task force, I cover the entire state of Maryland. So I don't care if you're in Ocean City or if you're in Baltimore, it doesn't matter. And whether it's the education, the prevention, or the restoration, reach out to me at thearamintausa.org. website, you can put Candace at aramintausa.org. The email will come directly to me. I will gladly talk it through, whatever your needs are. No two people will have the same needs, right? But you may say, can you come out and talk to our community? We go everywhere. And again, I don't care if you're a sorority, a church group, a school, educators, doctors, nurses, whatever it is, run it by me and I will gladly come out and talk to you. Again, we'll talk through it and then to it.
That's great. I appreciate that, Candace. Thank you so much for coming on this. It is a very important subject, but certainly something that's well needed for our community. And again, if there's anyone that's watching us, you definitely want to reach out to Candace at aramintausa.org. And I think it's going to be well worth contacting them. By the way, a plethora of resources on your website. I really appreciate that. So multiple resources on there. If you want to investigate more, please visit their website. They're doing such a great job in our community. A little shout out to Candace, by the way. So she is a licensed real estate agent in Chester, Maryland. Is that correct? You're in Chester?
No, in Montgomery County, Maryland.
You're in Montgomery County now. I'm sorry. Okay.
God bless you.
Okay.
I thought I would do a little investigating on you, and I saw it was Chester. So I apologize. I didn't realize you were in Montgomery.
Okay.
So that's great.
Well,
Yeah.
good. Now I know who to refer people to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I
No,
appreciate
they have actually just allowed me to do a human trafficking training now as a 1.5 credit hour for our learning. Yes,
In
that's
Montgomery
top.
County.
for CE class.
Well, now this one is in Anne Arundel County, but then we're
Okay.
taking it across.
Is it
But
going to
the
be a
fact that
Maryland
that's
thing, like a
happened,
MAR thing?
It will be. It will be a
'cause
MAR
I'm
thing.
going to tell I know the president of our HCAR here at our
Yeah,
association, so I
Yeah.
can say something to her. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think
I'm
it's
teaching
great.
it for ACAR tomorrow, but I'm just really thrilled that we're able to do that. So
Oh,
thank you.
yes,
my goodness.
yes.
Thank
Awesome.
you
that's
guys. I
great.
appreciate you.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank
Candace, thank you very much,
you.
and we will definitely connect a little bit later as well.
Yes.
And I'll send you a follow-up email as well. Okay, so I
Thank
Thank you.
appreciate
I
that.
appreciate you
much.
guys.
Thank you so much.
good-
Alrighty,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate
Take care now.
you.
Well,
All
that
right,
was
honey.
that was great. Yeah, what a great.
I mean,
great to have her on.
We're not
and
celebrating
share
the
that.
topic, but we're celebrating the education and the resources and the heart
Exactly.
behind this ministry.
Yep, exactly. We're going to
You know,
dive right
it's
into
so
calendar
hard.
of events.
Okay,
and we'll
let's
be
go.
right back.
There's no need to complicate things. Let's stick to the basics. We both know what we want. Let's just keep it simple. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We dance on the same wavelength. This feels like a new beginning. We both know what we want. Let's just keep it simple. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So won't you let me trip with you? Leading on fire. Leave us till tomorrow.
Welcome
summer
back.
camp at Eden Mill.
Summer
That is
camp.
beautiful.
It's all coming around the corner now. You have people online that are inquiring
right?
about summer camps.
I know.
And
Planning
registering their kids, planning
vacations.
vacations. And here we have
Yep.
rain all day today, and it was
It's a little
warmer,
gloomy.
but still, it was gloomy.
A
But
little gloomy.
yeah, hopefully, don't plant those flowers yet. Oh my goodness,
Hey.
don't do that. I know you want to, but don't
You
do that
don't
because
even touch the flowers.
we're going to have probably
That's
another
my
night of
job.
freezing somewhere.
I know we
on-
will. They
in
say
March.
May, but
Yep.
you know, I hope not because that'd depress me.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Housing stats. We'll be
Oh.
right back.
Get you whatever you want. I'll settle for nothing. As long as we can keep the fire.
All right.
So that was the national housing
That national.
markets.
Yep. I like to mix
So-
it up a little bit.
Oh, no. But what I'm saying is I looked at ours today in this Harford County region, and here prices were up 5%. In our region, they were up 8%. So if you're considering buying, don't sit on the fence. You know, just jump in. Rates came down. Awesome. That's always a wonderful thing. But, you know, you don't want to be competitive against 20 people.
Yep.
Right now, you might be the only one or maybe 5.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's still a good time to sell and still a good time to buy.
Yeah.
Because
There's
you
always
take your
someone
money.
buying. There's always someone
Yes.
selling. So don't wait until the inventory increases because you're going to be a buyer that's going to be in a competitive situation every offer that you make. So recently we had some very smart buyers that pulled the plug and they won the property and they're excited.
And we negotiated monies for them.
Yep.
Seller concession. I'm getting tired here. Seller concession,
Yep.
which negotiations last year, we didn't see any.
Yeah.
So,
It
you
was
know,
tough.
but anyway, we're always looking out for you. You are the number one person. And
Yep.
we want to help you.
Maria, we're always better. What?
Together.
Maria, we're always better together. Remember that. You and I and our team
Well.
and our family and our community, we are better together when we stick together. And number 2, if you're looking to buy or sell a property in the near future, put Maryland Homes team at the top of the list of those that you want to interview. And you're going to find out very quickly that we are not only relational, but we are very professional. We take our job very serious, and we are going to do a great job for you. Okay? We look forward to seeing you at our next show. Take care. We'll
great
see you
week.
soon. Bye now.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life. Deep connection lights a spark. It's like you know me in the depths of my heart. We're dreamers. Don't care what other people say. We live it like this could be our final day. We're dreamers. Don't care what the others say. We're doing this in our way. We come alive in the nighttime. There's something about how we dance in the moonlight. That look in your eyes, it tells me that you want me and all my loving. We come alive in the nighttime. You and I, we come alive. We come alive. We come alive. What's your weakness? What's your type? Somehow I